What's up guys, I've got a special review for you today. We have the RitFit Smith Machine 2.0. Now this is an upgrade from the original 1.0, which includes bearings and replacement of the sliders and full metal guide rods for better stability. Now recently I've been in the market for a Smith machine, and mostly for workouts that involve going till failure and for safety reasons. You know, most of the time I work out alone in my home gym, so the safety features that it offers are sufficient for my needs. Now, the company RitFit were gracious enough to send me the Smith machine in exchange for an honest review. And I'm excited about this review because basically it's the first of its kind with respect to an affordable, budget-friendly Smith machine for home use. I'll cover an unboxing, assembly with tips and tricks, pricing, dimensions, features and accessories, performance tests, pros and cons, and some closing comments. So let's get started. So you can find this item in a couple of places, and the first we'll go over is a cheaper option, which is Amazon.com, and the Smith machine is running for about $470 respectively. Now RitFit offers several bundle packages that include bumper plates or even rubber plates depending on your preference. The bumper plates are a little more expensive and they're ideal for exercises that involve dropping your weight bar, for example using the landmine attachment. But ultimately, the rubber plates are sufficient. They're a little less costly and they get the job done. The bundle packages come in a variety of weight options from 140 pounds, 230 pounds, and also 340 pounds, but only in the bumper plate option. The 340 pound option is ideal for someone that's gonna lift a lot of weights. I mean, it comes with bumper plates galore. You have 210 pounds, 225s, 235s, 245s, and even 255 pounds of selection. And the last bundle option is the Smith machine with the adjustable weight bench that RitFit offers, and this is for a total of $700. And your second option is the RitFit website, and you can find it for $540. They do offer a 10% discount right now, but ultimately the cheaper price is on Amazon.com. So we're focusing on the two packages right here in the front, as the two back packages were just extra equipment that RitFit had sent me. These boxes were really heavy, which is a good thing. That means it's a quality product. And the small package on the top is the actual clamps that go on the barbell. This first box was packaged fairly well. It had a lot of tape on it. It almost seemed like it was open before, but had a lot of these rectangular foam paddings placed randomly, but everything inside was wrapped with bubble wrap. Most of the items in this package were the guide rods, the back upright frame, bottom base frame, and the bottom cross beam. Here's a close-up of the hollow guide rods that go on the pulley system, and keep in mind you have the solid guide rods that go on the actual Smith machine. These were really heavy, really quality. I couldn't imagine how the 1.0 Smith machine was given with hollow guide rods. I would imagine they'd be very flimsy when in use, but as I mentioned, these are very dense and have a lot of weight to it. And here's a close-up of the hollow guide rods that go in the pulley system for the plate carriage. These can be hollow because all it's doing is carrying your weight plates, which go just straight up and down. Here's the barbell rod, which is actually heavier than the hollow guide rods itself, and a close-up of the 14 gauge steel that you'll find on the frame. As for the second box, here you're gonna find most of the accessories for the Smith machine. Everything was packaged very tight. I couldn't really get much movement out of any of the items that were further down in the box, so I had to go ahead and open it up to get all the rest of the products and equipment out. One thing I discovered early on is that every single item in the box had some type of bubble wrapping around it, so they were protected. But also most of the material on this equipment is some type of steel or metal, and I did notice quite a bit of scuffs on it. And I mean, it's not really a big deal, but it was surprising to me considering how thoroughly it was wrapped with bubble wrap. I didn't find any piece of equipment that wasn't wrapped. And another thing to note is that none of the equipment in the box was labeled with stickers with letters or numbers to correspond with the user manual. But this is not a problem considering how thorough and detailed the user manual is. It has a bunch of pictures to correspond with the piece of equipment that you're using, and this is very helpful for the assembly process. All right, here we have some first impressions. Here's the plate carriage. To the right, the landmine. Top left, we have the quick release plate storage tubes. Here's a close-up of the pull-up bar. It's pretty good material, and then it's made out of that 14 gauge steel. The quick loading pedals for when you're doing rows, and notice how they have the J-hook type of connection, and they're also labeled left and right, which is semi-helpful. The base pulley system, which is 14 gauge steel as well, and the hollow guide rods go into those two holes right there. here is a close-up of the pulleys, and notice they are plastic. Later on in the video, I'll give you another option to potentially upgrade to aluminum pulleys, but these are pretty smooth anyway. The owner's manual, which is very detailed, and I am going to go over it briefly, which is necessary for the assembly process. Here's the last package, which is the clamps for the barbell, and I've actually never had any clamps like these before. I've seen them in the past, so I was excited to get my hands on these, but essentially they're made out of just pretty much a hard plastic, and I was expecting kind of a metal material, but it's pretty straightforward. You have this little red knob right here where it clips down, and if you want to disconnect or unhook, loosen this this clamp, you would kind of push down on that red knob, and pretty straightforward. I think the screws itself are hard plastic as well, but I couldn't confirm that. It seems kind of hollow. It's not that heavy. It doesn't seem like really quality material. Moving on to the owner's manual, and like I mentioned, I'm going to briefly go through every single page in this manual, and mostly because I'm going to cross-reference later on in this video for the assembly process. I'm hoping it's going to be helpful for some of y'all that purchase this Smith machine and can reference back to the steps and tips and tricks that I'm going to provide. I'm going to try to be detailed, step 1, step 2, all the way and so on to the end. And this should be helpful for anyone that's in the assembly process on this item. They can reference back to this. Ask any questions in the comment section. I'd be glad to help. Here we have the parts list, and it's very detailed with pictures to correspond with the actual pieces of equipment. And two things with this: one, it's very helpful in the assembly phase when going through the steps and identifying the exact equipment that you need for that step. And two, when dealing with customer service. Let's say a piece of equipment is damaged or just needs to be replaced. Well, now you can refer back to this owner's manual and get the exact name of that product or piece of equipment that needs to be replaced. This will save so much time when dealing with them. So you'll find that there are 13 steps in this assembly process, and it took me about 1.5 hours, maybe 2 hours to complete it. And I did this completely 100% on my own. I did not need anyone to kind of hold a piece of equipment while I tightened it down. So it is possible to get this done by one person. I really didn't see any safety concerns. Maybe the biggest risk is when balancing the beams before you tighten them down and placing the solid guide rods in its holes and kind of balancing them in an angle, making sure that they don't slip to the side before you tighten those down to the frame as well. I can honestly say that it was pretty self-explanatory if you followed the instructions to a T. Here are all the bolts that came with the product, and one side still had the bolts in its plastic compartment and labeled. Unfortunately, the other side looked like it had been opened before. It didn't make it through, so there was bolts galore all over the place. But one thing to note, when I finished putting together this Smith machine, there was not a single bolt or nut left over. It's pretty impressive. All right, here we have our first tip in the assembly process. These bolts have a square base and the beams have a square hole that the bolt goes through. Be sure and make sure that the bolt is flush within the beam before you tighten it. This can be a problem when you have a bolt sitting at the base of the frame and you might not be 100% sure that the bolt is actually in the hole. So be sure and make sure that it is flush within there before you tighten it. Otherwise, it'll be in a bind. Step 1 complete, where we have the bottom cross beam connected to the two bottom base frames. Here we have step 2, and here we have the solid guide rod with a flat side on the bottom. And here's where I made my first mistake. So here we have a rubber pad followed by a safety hook. There's supposed to be another rubber pad between there and the slider. And also notice the slider has an upside down R. That's actually correct. Keep that in mind in your assembly. But yes, a rubber pad goes between the safety hook and the slider. Now I'm thinking ahead here. Here's a little tip. I added these bolts on the bottom of the frame because as I'm adding the solid guide rods to the base frame, the next step calls to bolt down the uprights to the base frame, and this could be very cumbersome to get the bolts under the base frame. You'd have to lift up the base frame while the solid guide rods and the uprights are in place. So it just makes a lot of sense to add the bolts prior to proceeding to step number 3. Moving on to step number 3, we have the guide rods and the uprights in place. On the top of the uprights, you'll find some threads. This will be used to bolt down the guide rod into the uprights. And here's the ending result of step number 3. This is where I have my flaw. You have the rubber pad on the bottom followed by a safety hook, then another rubber pad, and then the slider. So make sure you have that correct. I had to disassemble this equipment to fix it. And remember, the letters are upside down, left and right. That is correct the way it is. So make sure you keep that way. Step number 4 focuses mostly on the pull-up bar, and it's pretty self-explanatory. I believe you have 4 different bolts, 2 on the right side and then 2 over on the left side. And I do have a tip here. There's a hole below this top bolt. Be sure you cover it before you put the nut into the bolt. If you do drop the nut inside that hole, you'd have to disassemble everything to fish it out. Step 6, we're getting into the barbell, where we have the barbell shaft in the middle and the black barbell rod that goes through it. You have these pegs on the outside that hold your bumper plates in place, a 2-inch, and then you'll need an Allen wrench to bolt it in place. The knurling on the barbell shaft is pretty much non-existent. You really can't feel it when you're working out. You might need some chalk for your hands if your hands get sweaty in your workouts. Here we have the safety hooks, one of the main reasons why I wanted a Smith machine. As I work out alone, it's very helpful having that peace of mind lifting heavy weights, knowing that if I can't get the bar up, I can always just hook it safely. Step 8 and 9 calls for the hollow guide rods to be inserted into the plate carriage, and make sure you have the threads on the top side, which those are going to bolt into the pulley system top frame. Step 10, we're getting into the pulley system, and this is a more complex one for the lat bar. We'll start here on the left side. We'll start with this rubber ball, and be sure and run the cable before you insert the pulley and bolt it on. So you want to run the cable through, grab your pulley, put it in place, and then bolt it in place after that. Going on to the next pulley, before you install that pulley, run the cable over it, and then insert the pulley itself and then bolt it on. Make sure it's loose. Then you grab this bolt right here, and then you just kind of bolt it in place. Now I'm going to take this moment to show you another option to upgrade your pulley system to an aluminum one, but these pulleys are very sufficient, very smooth from what I can see. So let's go through it one more time, going over that pulley, under this one, over those two, and then you have your ball that connects to your lat bar. This next one is not as complex. You have that first pulley on the bottom over this pulley right here, and I'm going to pause the video. You have 3 options. Use the top bolt area to tighten up on your cable, or use the bottom bolt area to loosen on the cable, depending on how it feels. And then from there you pull the cable down, and you have a carabiner clip that connects to the cable, followed by a chain, followed by a second carabiner clip that connects to a bolt. So one more time, you're going over this pulley, down into this carabiner clip chain mechanism. And here's a little visual of how this system works for the plate carrier. And here's how the LAT-Pull Down pulley system works as well. And like I mentioned, these are plastic pulleys, but they are very smooth from what I can see. At this point, you want to verify that all the attachments, that everything's in place, double, even triple check it. And once you confirm that everything is the way it should be, then you can move forward with tightening every single bolt on the system. And be sure and do not over tighten the bolts. You'll see that the 14 gauge steel will give in if you over tighten it. RitFit did provide this lubrication oil, which I did put on both sets of guide rods, and it did help the system function smoothly. All right, I'm going to illustrate what the glide rails and the sliders sound like. And I'm going to be pulling from one side, so this is going to kind of illustrate that it goes up and down evenly despite which side you pull up and down on. You can actually hear the ball bearing sliding up and down the glide rail, but it's very smooth. We have the landmine, and you'd basically put your own personal barbell through it. You'd use this bottom screw to hold it in place. And the way it works is just basically a little peg that goes through the bottom of the base frame, and then a little spring action safety pin. This is the band peg where you can utilize resistance bands. You'd loop over the top peg and down into the bottom peg. Same concept. It's basically a peg that goes through the bottom of the frame and a spring action safety pin to hold it in place. We also have 2 barbell storage frames, one on each side. Moving on to warranties, the frame is 36 months and accessories at 12 months. Some dimensions to consider. I have 9-foot ceilings in my home gym, so there's plenty of room for pull-ups, but consider the 82 inches in height. The weight capacities, we have 500 pounds for the weight bar and 1,000 for the safety hooks. The plate carriage is 330 pounds, which I think is sufficient for most people's needs. I've pretty much covered all the attachments, but here's a little diagram of everything that comes with this Smith machine. the performance test, and it'd been a while since I jumped on a Smith machine, so I was kind of getting acclimated to it. But I did appreciate getting deep in the squats and having that peace of mind of the safety hooks. Going into bench press, I had the safety hooks set to high, so I had to reposition those. And at this point, I'm trying to set my body position to where the bench press feels correct. Keep in mind, this is the first time that I'm getting on this Smith machine, so repositioning the bench also in my body position. So I think I had it at this point. It felt really good. And then also the peace of mind of the safety hooks is awesome. So this is how close I had to get the bench press to the back of the frame in order to have the right position for my body on this bench press. Here's another view once it felt perfect. Going into shoulder press, and I'm excited to load up this bar in the future for my workouts and go till failure. We have the lat-pull down. Felt really good, and this is just a solid bar. It doesn't swivel at all, but that's what you expect, right? This is a $450 machine. A low roll bar as well. Not too many complaints. I mean, this is a budget-friendly Smith machine for home use. Jumping into the pull-up bar, and I went ahead and placed the barbell as low as possible. If I had it any higher, it kind of got in my way as I was doing pull-ups. But here are some wide pull-ups, and I noticed that the rack is very sturdy. I mean, it is weighted down with two 35-pound bumper plates on the back side and two 25-pound bumper plates on the front side on the barbell. But considering the 14-gauge steel 2x2 and the price of this product, I mean, it didn't wobble at all. It was kind of held in place. I was impressed. I'd like to point out some of the cons of this machine, and please keep in mind this is a budget-friendly Smith machine, but this attachment, it's just basically a bar. It doesn't swivel at all. The same goes for the lap bar pull down, but you can upgrade those attachments. The second one is I wish we had more options to set these safety hooks, because at the level of the bench that I have, it's either too high or too low. Right now I'm kind of pushing the bar as low as I can, and you know, it's hitting my chest. Going into closing, I feel strongly that this is the first of its kind in terms of a budget-friendly Smith machine for home use. The safety features alone are awesome for individuals that work out on their own. It's difficult to compare this to any other Smith machine in the same price range because it really is the first of its kind. If you have any questions, reach me in the comments section. I always appreciate feedback as well. We'll catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.